morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world right now. This is Amrys Wang of the Raw Entrepreneur. I am with Dr. Josie, even though her name on her Zoom is not the right name. This is, Dr. Josie's with us, and Stephanie, all the way from Canada. I love us to bits. Today, unfortunately, I think the moon, we are shifting planetary wise, and Josie can go into that in more detail. But Isla's running late because of daylight savings time in the UK. So she is really behind. She might not be able to join us. Julie as well, she's unable to join us today. But we're gonna send her lots of happy birthdays because it's a birthday week, actually, if I remember correctly. So, we're gonna send all these lovely people lots of love. Today, Josie is we're going to actually talk about a follow-up from last month's circle, which was actually a very meaningful topic. And we had a lot of feedback from people who actually listened in to thank us for sharing about death and how to be more conscious about it. It was a very powerful session. I couldn't speak much during the whole recording session because I was so moved, and I kind of like cried. I think Stephanie, you were crying as well. It was a very powerful session, and today we're gonna talk a bit more about how to move on consciously to support ourselves after death. And Dr. Josie here has some insights that she would really like to share with everyone, so I'll just hand it over to her.
Okay, thank you, Amrys. It's good to be here with you all. Yeah, we're sitting right now in a very potent time, a liminal time at the new moon. And each month we have the new moon is the dark of the moon, and it's the time we plant seeds. And if you go outside, you won't see the moon in the sky right now. And it's a new moon in Scorpio. And Scorpio in and of itself is a time to go inward, and there's this intensity and passion with Scorpio, and Scorpio deals with death and rebirth. So it's a good time to be having these conversations. This particular new moon in Scorpio is actually opposing a planet called Uranus, which is lightning bolt change. And I think everybody, even if you aren't aware of the planets around the Earth, is feeling the intensity right now. We've had a really tough year and a half, and I think the intensity is building. We're also having a lot of solar flares now, huge amounts. I've talked to probably about 5 or 6 people. It's like you don't have any energy. You just want to either crawl back into bed. Epsom salt baths right now are really good to take. Meditation, and to just be gentle with ourselves. And this is kind of what I recommend for people during the grieving process. I think our world, and it's not even our Western world. Amrys, you're in Singapore. Everything is go, go, go and produce, and we've got to keep this yang energy of moving outward. Well, we're in the time of the year where it's time to go inward and to rest. The last Samhain, which is Halloween, is celebrated as the last harvest of the season. It's when the nuts are brought in, and the very last harvest and the last preparations are made for winter. And winter in the northern hemisphere is a time where you literally hibernate. You sit around the fire and tell stories. You sleep longer because the days are shorter and it's colder out. You make really good hearty broths, bone broths, and things to nourish you. You eat a lot of root vegetables because the lettuces and the things that grow above ground aren't available. And so those root vegetables actually help root us down into the ground and give us some grounding. And so these are all good suggestions when you're going through a grieving process. And in Chinese medicine, this also happens to be the metal element time of year. And metal is all about grieving and the lung. That's why a lot of people get respiratory infections this time of year as well. Yeah, so it's all tied in. So if we start living our lives tied into the natural cycles of the earth, we can have a much easier time moving forward with it. Whereas if we resist it and say, no, I'm going to go out and go to every Christmas party I'm invited to and go shopping and do all this stuff, we can end up getting sick. But back to the grieving, as what I find, being a holistic vet for over 20 years, I've had a lot of animals come to me with chronic illnesses, and I'm leading them through the last months, years of their life, all the way up to that point of death. And one of the biggest issues I see with my clients is that if it was a human family member, they would be given time off from work. People would be a lot more supportive of them at going through that grieving process. Whereas a lot of times I see, well, they don't get time off work. If they tell their neighbor or they tell their good friend who may not be an animal person about it, they're like, well, that's just a dog. Just get over it and move on. Go adopt another dog right away. That's another thing people do, or their husband will come home with a new puppy when they've just lost like the love of their life that they were very connected to. So a lot of times what I'll tell them is, if they don't have to be specific with people, to literally, instead of saying, well, my dog died, say a very dear family member died, so that they will get some more of that support. It is changing when we're in animal circles all the time. Of course we don't feel that, but it's when you step out into the collective. And I think all of us, I don't think there's a single person out there right now that hasn't suffered a lot of loss over this last year and a half. And we're looking at certain things on the earth dying. We're looking at our ways of life that we had a year and a half ago dying. Our mobility around the planet has been severely limited. We're looking at supply chain issues. So it's no longer, well, let's just go down to the store and buy something. It might not be on the shelves to buy. So we're in this huge transition period. And honestly, like, the way of life that we had before wasn't sustainable. There's been signals coming at us left and right. The sirens are now going off. We have the big climate conference in Glasgow happening, that the earth is screaming at us with massive hurricanes, with volcanoes that won't stop erupting. And yet, what does it take for us humans to say, we need to change our way of life? We need to change the way we live on this planet. And but there's a grieving that has to go along with that. And that's one thing that we leave out. And grief isn't something we have any conscious control over. Like, as my mother was getting older, I was like, well, I'm going to grieve her death before she dies, and then when she dies, I won't have to go through that. Well, that wasn't really the case. That's never the case. We don't get to choose how long the grieving process is. We don't get to choose when it comes up. You can be standing in the grocery line and a wave of grief will come slamming into you out of nowhere, and you'd have to deal with it in the moment. So I think that's where we need to have a lot of patience with ourselves. We need to have a lot of compassion for ourselves. We need to be able to slow down and say, I'm having a really hard day today. Let me take myself to the botanical gardens and just walk around. Or even if it's like, sometimes what I will do is just step out for 15 minutes and sit on the ground, on the grass, and stare at the sky and just do a really simple meditation and just breathe. And if the tears need to flow, allow the tears to flow. Because a lot of times also, I think we're said, well, you're grieving, so you're depressed. So, then the next thing is you need to go to the doctor and you need to take a pill. And I've gone through some really dark nights of the soul myself in my own life. And there was one point where I think 2 or 3 clients were like, well, why don't you just go to the psychiatrist and just get on an antidepressant? And what that does is that actually stops a natural process from happening. And so sooner or later, whether it's now or whether it's 10 years down the road, you're still going to have to deal and process with those emotions. I do recommend, especially people have such busy lives, but if you lose an animal, and sometimes these animals, they mean so much to us and they are so close to so many people. I know women uh, who have incredibly full lives, who live in absolutely gorgeous houses, who could go out and ask their husband and to buy them whatever car they would want in the world. And they're walking around they can go to the store and buy whatever they want. They can get on a plane and travel wherever they want, even with COVID. And yet the little tiny ancient poodle in their arms, losing that dog is bringing them to their knees. And none of that external stuff means anything to them. So to get the support with that, I think sometimes it's a lot of times it is good to seek outside help, to either seek a therapist or seek a group grief circle out, which there's more and more of those, so that you're surrounded by people who understand what you're going through or who are going to be supportive, who aren't going to tell you, well, just get over it and stop crying and get back to your life, because that's not the way it works. So I think that's very useful. I did because Samhain which is a cross-quarter holiday, which we just passed, Halloween. I did a circle for my online group where we actually had little coffins, and everybody picked out something that they were ready to release in their life, and we honored that thing over a 3-week period of decorating the coffin and collecting things to put in it that were symbolized that thing we're releasing, and then we symbolically released it into the fire and buried it in the earth, giving it back to the earth. So there can be small rituals like that. And then actually Isla came on and did a beautiful Day of the Dead shamanic journey where we actually are led into the internal world and to connect to the spirit of the animal that passed. Because that's another thing. I mean, death brings us to the spiritual world, and there's a lot of different beliefs with that. So I think people have to really look at what their individual belief is and do some exploring. I think another thing, I think people think, well, I'm Jewish or I'm Christian or I'm pagan or I'm this and that there's no cross-cultural or cross-spiritual work. But I think it's good to give yourself permission to explore different cultures, different religions, and how they celebrate death and how they honor death. Because we've lost the death rituals that we always used to have. They're there, and I've picked up a lot of them and use a lot of them in my work. But there's a lot of all those things help us process that grief and help that grief move through a little bit quicker than not.
Dr. Josie, because you're also like a death doula for your clients as well, when their animal passes. Would you mind going through the process, of how you would say handhold them to guide them through the grieving process, as an example?
Yeah, I could. It's an individual thing. And honestly, Amrys, I used to do a lot more euthanasia, not on the fly, but for people who I didn't know. They would need their dog put to sleep, and they would call me. And I've stopped doing a lot of that because I feel the dying isn't something that happens in one moment in time. It happens over a period of time. And I think there's a lot that can be done being present and sitting with the animal while they're still alive, leading up to the actual letting go of when the physical body stops functioning. And then there's process after that as well. So what I usually do, I'm going to people's homes so the animal can be within their own home environment. And when I go in, I'm doing acupuncture, but I'm also communicating with that animal, and a lot of things will come through me of what that animal may need, and showing people, the people are, there's that anxiety about, we want to keep them going, they're not eating, we have to shove more food in their mouth and things like that. So I'll guide them through the different stages, where there'll be a stage, and the way I describe it is the spiritual body of the animal. There's an etheric body, and an astral body will actually become so much bigger than the physical body can hold. And the physical body starts shrinking down. So they'll lose weight, they'll lose muscle mass. And that's usually a pretty gradual process. But as that spiritual body gets bigger, I try to help the people just be able to sit and be present with the animal. And there'll come a certain time where I've had dogs literally, they'll just clamp their mouth shut and they don't want anything else to go in orally at all. And it's because their physical body can no longer process that physical material. But they can stay alive a lot longer even after that. But they'll just want to stop all the meds. And that may be because the meds aren't making them feel good. I don't take a lot of pharmaceuticals, but when you have a dog on heart meds and steroids and all this different stuff and pain meds, we've got a whole, I would love to do a different topic on that. We have a whole pain medication crisis in veterinary medicine right now. I mean, but that's a whole nother topic. I thought I would be using a lot more pain meds for death, and I really don't, because animals and us, we know how to die. Our soul and our spirit within us, we know how to die. So, and there's not a lot, when you get to the point where they're clamping their mouth shut, they don't want to process that food. A lot of it is just keeping them comfortable. And I'll go from maybe like once a week visits to their house to every other day visits, where I'll talk to them on the phone. They'll call me up, oh, they're doing this and they're doing that. But I found with the acupuncture itself, because it works on the energy body, I rarely have to reach for I don't use any sedatives. I don't use any opioids. I don't use any pain meds. I use acupuncture, and I also do Reiki as well, and do a lot of things just being present with them. And they'll be really comfortable. A lot of times, even using the acupuncture, they'll go in their sleep where I don't even have to give them an injection. But it's allowing the people to be able to sit and be present and hold vigil, and a lot of it is the caring. If they can't get up to go to the bathroom, they'll put diapers on the dog. I'll teach them how to clean their bodies really good. We'll keep them well hydrated. I'll have them do droppers of water in the mouth and sub-Q fluids, but very mild intervention. And then usually if the day comes, I always tell them the animal will give them some sign that they're ready. They always do. You'll wake up and they'll just look at you and be like, I'm done. I think we've all had those days. Even right now, it's like, I'm just done and over this. It's time. And so with that, I usually, depending upon the person, a lot of times it's more difficult. Some people will have all their family there. A lot of times I stipulate that I would rather have the main caretaker of the person there with them, especially if they're really connected and the other family members really aren't. Then I would rather have the other family members wait in an outside room and then come in afterwards to support that person. Because some family members can be very disruptive depending upon the dynamics in the family. And I'm there, like when I start that process and I'm connecting in with that being, I don't want anybody's fear and anxiety and other stuff interfering, because that's a very sacred thing. They can take their their fear and anxiety somewhere else, but we allow them to lift off and get their wings and fly. And yet there's a period. I do it in kind of stages, so that there's a period where you can still feel their presence. But I have a lot of my clients say they've actually they feel them leave the body. And then I was initiated into the Incan death rites, where you actually energetically unlock the chakras, because the chakras hold the luminous energy field to the physical bodies. So I usually do a short ceremony afterwards and unlock the chakras. If the people aren't into that, I'll do it very subtly, or I'll do it intentionally without the hand movements, but I still do it. And sometimes even before that, before they've actually died, I'll bring in, if the people like it, I'll bring in essential oils, because there's very ancient rituals around anointing the body with essential oils. And I did that with my father actually when he was in the hospital. His whole room was filled with so much frankincense. But again, it was because the nurses would come by and just stick their heads in the door, and they're like, oh, we're just checking in. And this one nurse was finally like, we love the smell of this, but it was actually helping them with their job, you know. So I'll use essential oils. I'll usually take, again, depending upon the client, depending upon their belief system, I may take some sage and I put sage in their mouth and in their ears, or wrap them up, and this is the other thing, I really, and I've had animals communicate this to me directly and through animal communicators, is it's really important to take care of their bodies. So if they have urinated or defecated, we clean the body. I help the person, or I do it, and we brush them. And I like cats, I like to curl up into a ball because they always sleep with their their little noses under their tails. And so I'll position them. I might lay out rose petals over the body, or I'll ask the person, as we're leading up to this time, as part of their preparation, I'll ask them, I'll say, some people even have dreams like, oh, I dreamt of these white flowers, and I said, have some white flowers available, on the day we come over, and let them go. And so I'll use that. And then I also ask people, I used to provide my own sheet, but now I ask people to provide a shroud for the body. So, because a lot of times dogs will have their favorite blanket, or they'll have something from their bed, or the owner will be like, well, they always love sleeping on this t-shirt, whatever it is. So it's very personal. We wrap the body up with that, and I wrap it, very tightly, like a little cocoon, like a little baby, so that gives them time to really again release them and take care of them and everything. Because the hardest thing, I mean, for the animals that I've lost, the hardest thing was watching them walk out that front door, or carrying them out to the car, because it's just that point and finality. So I just try to make that as gentle and loving, and have them participate in it as much as possible.
Yeah.
And then I also, I recommend them setting up an altar, like lighting a candle, even if they're having a really hard time deciding to let them go. And there's times when they're so attached to that animal. I've seen animals that I don't even know what's keeping them alive and why they're breathing, but it's the love from that person, that attachment, that keeps them going far longer than physically is possible. But in those cases, I'll have them sit down, and I'll have them do letting go rituals. I'll have them write a letter of gratitude for all the lessons and all the gifts that animals brought to them. I'll have them set up the altar beforehand with a candle, and that helps them start working through it and start releasing and giving the animal, because boy, there's a lot of animals, they have to get permission, especially dogs. Dogs are so damn loyal to their people. They will not go without that permission. It's just like, I'm under your command. And so they need that. A lot of dogs really need that. So
Yeah.
hi, it's nice
Hi, Isla. Isla just joined us. She managed to jump over the hour change and get here. love you. Thank you for doing that. I know you've had such a full day, man. We were just talking about how the world, the planets are shifting, and everything is just getting a bit topsy-turvy, with things. But thank you for joining us. Really, I didn't think you would, but I am really touched that you did. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. No, yeah, as I say, huge apologies. It was only when I was like coming back, and I'm like 7 o'clock, seven. I was like that. No, because the clocks went back, and that means it's all messed up. So yes,
Uh,
sorry.
no worries, no worries. I'm happy that you're with us. So we're just doing a really easy session today, just talking about you know, well, Josie was sharing, like how she would advise pet parents when the animals are crossing over, what to do, how to support, and how to consciously support the caregivers as well in
Mm,
that sense. Maybe you would like to, share what you think about that.
yeah, beautiful, and just tapping into what I just caught what Josie was saying right at the end. I really, you know, I guess a very similar protocol from what I was hearing. So, um, there is like for my yeah the way that I guess the way that I work, and if I am receiving information from somebody that their dog is ready to pass, soon to pass, has already passed, there is like Josie and I have already said this beautiful way we can see that beautiful we can see passing, how we can see a passing as an opportunity to for like a final gift for our animal friends, and also how we can do it in a sacred way and in a ceremony. So one of the things that I like to do if I can, and this is always the challenge because it's always, someone isn't going to contact me to be like, oh, I think my dog's going to transition in a month's time, can I book something in? So it's always that fine line between like I think my dog's gonna like pass tomorrow. I've arranged with the vet to come out, or so it's always a bit of a challenge. So there's general information I always send out in case I can't be there. What I love to do is to actually go into a soul ceremony with the dog. Well, yeah, with the dog. I've done it for cats and horses, but I am really primarily for me. My connection and the animal that I work with is canine, but this applies to any animal. So there's general information that I send out which can really support the animal in having an easier passing. And when I say easier, it's not like because the passing is going to be painful. The passing, this is from my experience, the way that I communicate the dogs that have been brought to me. Every passing has been peaceful. They're just like, and now I'm at peace. And there's a really big emphasis that the animal wants to share that. But there is, yeah, this, like Josie said, that's also what I receive of, if we are saying things like words to our animals of like, please don't leave me, I'm not ready for you to go, like, please stay on, then they kind of will hang on and hang on and hang on. But when they've passed, it's almost like they kind of get stuck in like in between worlds because we are so wanting them still to be with us, but we um, have to accept that it's time for them to journey on now to still be with us. I see for every animal in my life that has passed, I just see them become like part of my soul team. So I'm still there to ask their advice, to have assistance, to call them in, but just like my soul team, they're still rooting for me, like, oh yeah, come on, mama. But from like soul now, like I've got my soul team. But there's this importance. So one of the messages that I send out. So I'm going to go kind of individual and also generic. So the general information I send out, like Josie says, is to make an altar. And so I mean I have an altar because that's my teachings, but I'm not expecting anyone to be like, you need this altar, it needs to be this, and collect all these things. A really simple altar of I would say like use as a cloth, the altar cloth, a blanket that the dog loved to lie on, a t-shirt that you would normally wear when you were out walking the dog, um, or whether it is a blanket, just some fabric, and that kind of gets the makeshift altar. A candle goes in the middle, and then you have a bowl of water on the altar cloth, and also a little bit of food. And the water gets changed daily, and that little bit of food, it can be food that the animal loved to have every day. It can be food that's like, oh my god, he loved this so much, but it was bad for us. We didn't really have very often, or maybe he was intolerant to it. He loved it, but he was really intolerant to it, so he couldn't really have it. So it can be any type of food. And I will say, as best as we can, the candle is lit for 4 days. Obviously, for reasons if we're leaving the house or we have other animals around and we can't keep a candle lit for 4 days for like 24/7, we light that candle when we can. My candle is currently lit at the moment, as always. We light the candle when we can, and taking that time just to stare at the candle, because the flame of the candle represents the soul. It's the soul within. It's our inner light, our inner fire. So to stare at the candle and bring our animal to our awareness and just simply say, go to the light, go to the light. And even, I mean, I've worked with clients where like we're all bawling our eyes out, because almost like this peace that the client gets as well, to go, wow, it is okay. And knowing that, as I'm saying to my animal, go to the light, go to the light, we are supporting them. We are actually saying it's, you know, it's time for you to go there. So I find that is important, because the soul, even from that perspective, it can be harder to transition when the physical connection is like, please don't leave me, please hold on, please stay here, I'm not ready for you to go. So it's like, as I say, a final honouring, a final gift that we can give our animal friends. And the water is there to cleanse the soul as the soul passes. So there's a little bowl of water that gets cleansed every day. And the food, you know, I've had clients speak to me, it's like, oh my goodness, I didn't believe you, but the food is being eaten. So when the animal is like when the animal first passes, the spirit is still very close to the physical body for a few days, and so the food can be sustenance to help the soul pass now to the land of spirit, the land of ancestors, whatever we want to call it. And so I find again that can be really supportive and honouring of the animal's kind of process and transition into that place. And then with that, there is kind of maybe I can put it in the group. So when I've done 2 soul sessions before for dogs that have already passed, 2 of them, they shared with me 2 books that I'd never heard of before, and both of them are to do with grief. So I always send those 2 books out as to read. And then I have I did a Facebook Live in 2020 when we lost one of our dogs, Cola. I did a Facebook Live just about how I honoured him, how I supported him, how we can support the spirit in passing over. And so I always send that out as well. And then there's a couple of songs that I send out for the client to sing. One is helping the soul cross over, and one is also to help with the pain of just, you know, light the candle, just sit in that quiet space and sing this song to help the pain that you feel of the loss, of the grief, move through you as well. So that's kind of the general information that I send out. But if I can, what I like to do is if an animal is soon to pass, or when an animal has just passed, to connect to that animal and go, hey, almost like when we set up I don't know, a funeral care plan with our parents or grandparents, of when it comes to your funeral, what is it that you would like? We can do the same for animals of hey, what is it that you would like? Is it is there song? Is there food? Is there celebration? Is it quiet? Is it what is it that you need? And again, from my perspective and the animals that I've connected with, there is always this sharing. It's really important for me to say this, that non-human animals and our own soul does not know ego. Non-human animals and the soul does not have ego or judgment. So the condition always is, wow, thank you for asking me. Because you've asked me, this is what I would really love, this is what I'd like to hear, this is what I would like to have, this is what I'd like to be surrounded in, this is maybe a plant spirit that comes forward that I'd like to be immersed in. But also a knowing of if that's possible. So again, as humans, we can often go down the route of even my animal asked for this and I'm such a horrid person because I wasn't able to achieve it. There's always a, if that is possible. Our animals, as I say, they teach us so much, and one of the things they teach us, me from my perspective, is to not have ego, to not have judgment, because they don't. And I think it's really important to share that this is a connection and communication that animal is sharing if we have opportunity to ask, but then also from a place of and if that's possible. So if it's not possible, then that is also okay. But there are parts of maybe what the dog has asked for, what the animal has asked for, if we have to intervene or we have to take the dog to the dog or animal to the vets, and we can still, as long as our vet is accepting, and I would like to think that most vets are, or all vets are, where it's you know what, my dog asked to hear this music being played as they were transitioning, my dog asked to be able to smell this essential oil or have this flower around like Josie said, or to read. Some dogs I know they want to oh, can you read this to me, or can we watch this movie? Or it's really, I mean, the thing is how long is a piece of string? It then becomes specific to the animal that I'm connecting with. And then you can do the same thing again when an animal has passed, and that can be when an animal has passed several years ago or when an animal has passed recently. So there is this it's not as simple as oh, I'm taking my animal to the vet now to be put to sleep, to be euthanized, or my dog is naturally passed. There's still a holding that we can do, and this is what I do with my dogs. And when I can, given time constraints, this is what I really like to honour for the clients, for them to know like this is not the end, this is just another part of life. And there's a beautiful, like when we live in life, we give our animals love, we are constantly communicating with them and buying them things and giving them things. We can continue to do the same. And then that's why, you know, we are in Samhain, it's celebrating our ancestors, it's our blood ancestors, but also ancestors, family members that are our family regardless of species, what they are. So we can hold ceremonies, we can hold anniversaries, we can hold celebrations, we can hold honourings for our animals' anniversaries, whether it's the anniversary of their passing, it's the anniversary of their birthday, it's the anniversary of when we first collected them. And so through the fire, through the flame, they get to live on. And I really, from my perspective, and really just going back to from my own experience with Cola, we did it all through communication. So even when I was like, are you, aren't you, like, are you ready? And I know this is something that I've done with other clients as well, if they really want to know, like, I want to know if my animal's ready, because I don't want to make the wrong decision. And of course, no wrong decision is a wrong decision, because our animals have no ego or judgment. But Cola really was just like, I'm done. I've had an amazing life. I've had a great life. You surround me in love, but this is an option. This is an opportunity for me, and I'm done. I'm exhausted. And so I connected with him of like, okay, what would you like? So I spoke to my vet, and like, I really want you to drum. So I mean, my vets are beautiful. I love them because they're conventional, but they're really open to just like anything. They're like, we don't really understand it, but yeah, that's fine. So yeah, I drummed for a little bit, and I smudged the room, and I brought in, he wanted orange blossom. It was orange blossom and what was the other? Orange blossom and jasmine. So you want 2 floral waters, orange blossom and jasmine. And then so I saged the room. I drummed. I did a chant, and yeah, then we came home and I did the ceremony for 4 days with the altar. Just kept saying to like, go to the light, go to the light. And it's funny we're having this conversation because he was in my dream time yesterday with Tunkasila. So I had Tunkasila who's alive and Kola who's passed, but they were both really powerfully in my dream time last night, which was really, really beautiful. And that's the beauty, that they never end. Yes, of course you miss them physically, particularly when we have dogs, and Kola was a 50-kilogram dog that was, he was like my best friend. We miss them physically, but it's almost like I can never fully miss him because he's always there, because of the connection that we all have. I mean, it's always if I can do it, anybody can do it. And there's this beautiful honouring, and I love to share this because there is this assisting we can do. There is also, you may naturally be able to do it, but there is also this concept of a psychopomp. So it's something that I'm trained in doing, which is literally translates to spirit assist. And so you go into an altered state of consciousness where you connect to the soul of the animal and just go like, hey, like, let me just check in. Are you transitioning okay? Do you need support? Do you need assistance? Sometimes some animals will tell me like who they've seen, who are they waiting for, who's waiting for them. Or again, we can do the same thing. It might be we've got animals that we've had in the past that our dogs were connected to, or other animals were connected to. We can literally say to the animal that's really ready to transition, you know, when you're out of your body, just go to the light and meet who is waiting for you, because we have individuals waiting for us, even for ourselves. When it's our time to pass, there are individuals that are waiting for us to again make our passing be easier. So again, there's all these things that the soul is the soul. It doesn't matter what animal we have been in, the soul is still the soul. So when it's time to pass, and when the animal has passed, we can equally say the same thing to animals, like go to the light, and when you are moving towards the light, look for someone or something that's familiar to you. They're waiting for you, and just go to them. There's a slightly different way that I work in a psychopomp, because I have a couple of team members in my spirit team, but it's just a beautiful eclectic mix of how do we support our animals when they are passing and when they're about to pass. That is really powerful.
I was just going to add to, this came up listening to you, Isla. I've actually collected over the years, but I would always tell people that animal will send them some kind of message. It might be the same time, it might be a few days afterwards. I mean, I've gotten people, and they won't believe it, but they'll come through. I had a good friend actually lost a beagle whose name was Penny, and she had horrible separation anxiety. I mean, to the point where it was just painful to watch her sometimes, and she ended up literally dying of a heart attack during a thunderstorm. But the next day, they were going, a group of friends took her out to brunch, and they came back, and this is so bizarre because I talked to everybody who was there, and they're like, we hadn't they walked back to the car on the sidewalk, and there was a parking meter there, and there was these pennies on the ground that spelled out the name Penny on the sidewalk for her. I think I still have the photograph of it somewhere, but it's just things like that. And I've also had animals come through who will actually show people the form that they may return to them in, as if they take another body as well. So there's
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah.
There's so much we don't realize. It's such a powerful time. Like I look at for me, it's such an honoring to be present during somebody's dying, either a human or animal, because it's like those gates to the spirit realm open up, and helpers come through, other ants, like you said, other animals come through, ancestors come through, and we get this like little glimpse of the other side, and we get a glimpse of the source, you know. So it can be very powerful and very, very cute.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It is when we access the soul, which again we all can do. The it's almost like I wish I could record it all, but of course, because we're accessing it by going into an altered state, right? So like it's like I'm in this room, but I'm seeing so much, and so if I was to record it, it would just be my room. But it really opens up your soul to just actually realize like, wow, this is what life is about, and all the connections that we are always connected to. And yeah, really similar in the connections that I do for dogs that are passing, about to pass, or have passed, the shares that they bring through, even in the songs that they want to share. Like I want to send this song to my guardian, that isn't necessarily about like, you know, the words of the song about like the love and relationship we had. Sometimes it's more like, yeah, the dog was quite a little cheeky character, and like the last one, because it really made me laugh, was the dog wanted to share. I mean, amazing stuff with its guardian, which made absolute sense. But then it's like, oh yeah, and I also want to share this song, and it was oh my god, Snoop Dogg, Drop It Like It's Hot. And I had to go like, what is that? And then he's like, and I was like, yeah, he was kind of showing me like he was just cruising, like everyone like adored him, and he was like, yeah, everyone. And she was like, that's totally him. And so it's just amazing if like you can always have that connection. So when you hear that song again, when I connected with a dog, that had already passed, and then I was like, yeah, this song that was coming through was the three little birds. And they were like, oh my god, like we've heard that song every day for a week and we never ever hear it. Or like you say, those synchronicities. I always say there's no such thing as coincidence. There's always synchronicities of spirit is always speaking to us. It's just when we're present and we pay attention. And so our animal friends, yeah, always sending messages and information. As I say, whether it's dream time, whether it's journey time, whether it is contemplation, and then all of a sudden the sun comes behind a cloud, or there's a massive gust of wind, or a white feather drops even though there's like no bird around. It's yeah, really powerful, because then that's for me what becomes infectious, because we're like, wow, I want more of that contact, more of that contact, not necessarily to the animal from desperation, but just from like, I want more contact from the soul awareness, because it is so expansive. I mean, it's anything is possible, and when you're on that journey of like anything is possible, it's just wondrous. It does you really realize how unlimited life is, and yeah, how incredible life is.
That's the magic. The world opens up.
You know, for some pet parents, like who might not be, say, familiar with how you practice, both of you practice, or they they um they want to believe, but they're not sure how to cope with the grief after the animal has passed on. And you talking about synchronicities, you know is there a way where you would advise the pet parent who's grieving how how to um cope and I don't know, keep an open mind. Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, I think what I found often is if somebody's, and I've had this both with humans and animals actually, if somebody's really in that grief zone, the messages don't necessarily come through to them like other people will get them. Or I've had, actually, when my own father died, he showed up in somebody else's dream. So, and to send me a message. So I think sometimes that grief, it can be such, it's almost like a cloud over the body. It can be such a heaviness that the spirit can't get in. But I think we have to allow ourselves to go to that place but not stay stuck there, and that's why I think there's so much a death of one being can bring up grief that people have as processed from multiple stages of their life. And so that's why if they're feeling stuck, I think they need outside help to either, like, to go on a journey, work with a medicine person or therapist or somebody else that can kind of loosen things up and move the energy to help them move through it. And then there's also times when you might need to just sit and lock yourself in your room and bawl your eyes out. That's okay to do. It's okay to cry, and it's very healing to cry. So instead of keeping it bottled up inside, that's another thing. I think people don't give themselves permission to feel the emotions. The other thing, I just had this conversation with somebody the other day, is when the impending death is often much worse than actually going through the death process itself. So you can be standing there like you're on the edge of a black hole, and you're feeling like if you allow the grief to come in, you're going to disappear down that black hole and never be able to come out again. I had that when I lost a soul cat of mine. And this actually, spirit heard and saw where I was at. I was like, I'm gonna, if I I'm on the edge and I'm gonna fall down and I don't know if I'm gonna come back out. And spirit sent this little tiny itty bitty kitten without a mother that I had to bottle feed every 2 hours to me, to get me to send that love to that kitten, and it kept me from going down into that hole. But I don't think people should feel ashamed ever of asking for help or seeking outside help with it.
Yeah, because I found as a pet parent and plus a caregiver for a lot of rescue cases, when we do
Mhm.
palliative care, and it's so intense when you're taking care of, say, a sick or dying animal, and your whole life, the routine is all about taking care of that animal. There's a time for medicine or cleaning or whatever. And then when the animal passes, I found like quite a few pet parents and myself included where we have that PTSD, that shock and then that numbness because suddenly that routine is gone because the animal is gone. It's like suddenly there's total silence in the house, even if you have family members, but it's just so quiet suddenly. And then like that feeling of loss and emptiness, you know. How would you advise, like, is there like some routine or rituals that you can advise, these pet parents, like, like how can they help them to move on or get to start feeling a little bit more alive again, because I don't know, for me sometimes it's like it's that total shock, like I don't know what to do with myself now.
I think that's where the altar comes in a way too, so that you have that set up so you can spend time there, but also, so because there is a huge void, there's a huge emptiness. And I've talked to people, you'll still often see or hear the animal, or you'll wake up in the middle of the night. People waking up in the middle of the night to look over to see if they're still breathing, and you'll catch yourself still doing that. um, but I think that's where the altar and setting up, there is in almost every single tradition, there is that feeling that it takes like 3 days, about 40 hours for the luminous energy field to separate from the physical, so that being is still around. um and to be we this is where I feel like anybody at any point in time, it's really good to have a meditation practice, because we are so afraid to be in the silence and in the void. And yet that's where all the magic happens. It's so potent, and we're afraid of that space. A lot of people can't sit in an empty room in silence for more than 5 minutes, because all of a sudden, like you said, there might be people around, but it just starts closing down in on you, you know? And um, that's where meditation can really help. But I'll hand it over to Isla if she has a lot to say.
Thanks, Josie. You're really similar, and just while I remember it, you know, one of my teachings and one of my teachings that I teach others as well is this beautiful saying of it's one of the 4 medicine questions of when did you stop being comforted by the sweet territory of silence? And I love that, this sweet territory of silence, because most people like that silence is not sweet, and yet there is this strength we can build and we can create by being in the silence and then honoring what it is that we need. And again, from my perspective, I would go the full circle of the emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual support that a human needs, that a guardian needs when their animal has passed, that animal has transitioned. This, first of all, of like also knowing, again, our animals don't have judgment, they don't have ego, so it is okay to go out there and to move and to dance and to laugh. Like, a lot of people don't want to do that because, like, oh my, I'll feel really guilty because my animal will be looking down on me and going, oh, you should be sad, you should be in mourning. And that's just not true. Our animals have nothing but love for us, and certainly even like the soul only knows love. So there's like, okay, let's just look at what is like our hardships on ourselves, like what we're telling ourselves, and how we kind of unhook that and unpick that. But knowing of like, yeah, go out on the walk where you maybe walk your dog if you had a dog, or go out and be in nature and imagine you were climbing a tree with your cat, or laugh, like it's okay to laugh. But also from the other end of the spectrum, it's also okay to cry. And then again, I've worked with many a client where the loss of their animal has really opened up like Pandora's box of the grief that they're experiencing is actually not grief with their animal at all. It's really, really old grief that they just weren't able to give themselves acceptance, or weren't allowed at the time to grieve because they had to support the family members, or they were too young, or they didn't want to upset, like, yeah, a dad or a mom or a husband or a wife. So it's just like, wow, this grief is unreal. But it's like, yeah, it's almost like the animal leaving was the perfect timing for that person to be ready to go, and now this is the healing that your animal is so lovingly giving you, because now it's time. So really, yeah, I think for me, and again, I'm looking down because I have 2 altars, but one's in my medicine room, one's downstairs. There is an absolute reality, like you shared, Amrys, of sometimes we need to go deeper spiritually and look at, does that person need a soul retrieval? Because where there is that shock, that trauma of just like, wow, I feel lost, I feel so disconnected, I feel numb, I feel depressed, I feel low. Well, yeah, if it was such a shock, such a deep wound, then it is possible that part of you is lost, so we need to bring that soul fully back. So that'd be like looking at the spiritual support, and then the other side of that is in the physical support. Yes, like go and see a bereavement counsellor, a therapist, and that type of person that can do that type of therapy that they're qualified in doing. And the emotional support of like, yeah, what is it that your body, like feeling it? For me, I'm just like, we have 3 minds. We have like the head mind, but we have the heart mind and the body mind. And our heart mind allows us to connect to the soul. Our body mind tells us like, okay, what am I feeling right now? Where in my body am I feeling it? And what do I need to do? And we know from then our ancient medicines, our ancient wisdom, that we can, if we're going to hold grief, we can hold it in the lungs, we can hold it in the bowel, we can hold it in the stomach. So it can be a practice where we go into breath work. Breath work itself is so releasing, a releasing of trauma, a releasing of wounds, a releasing of grief. So you can do breath work to allow this grief to be released from the lungs, be eliminated through the bowels, this holding of sorrow that we might feel in the stomach. And that's why I love, just sitting at the altar and also making the time when an animal has passed, making the time to actually sit in the discomfort of silence, because where there is biggest discomfort is also greatest of healing. Being in, like, I do this for any of my animals that pass. I go into a ceremony itself of, I have to do my work, but then, okay, this evening, this morning, or this afternoon, like, I'm now sitting for as long as I can. It's 2 hours, it's 4 hours, it's 4 days. I am sitting and allowing myself to work through the grief. And I know in Indigenous cultures how it was taught to me is that when there is a death, everything stops, and the entire community go, we will just, I think it's for 4 days, I could be wrong. It's almost like you have 4 days for grief to pass and then you get a passage, but it's like you've got 4 days to basically be in the grief, be in the emotions. And this is the whole point of emotions. Emotions are flowing, so we don't hold on to them, but like, okay, now I want to talk about my animal. It's just, oh my god, all the crazy things that he did, let's laugh. Okay, now I'm feeling the pain again and the sorrow. It's going to rise and then fall and rise and fall, and honor that, to be like, do you know what, and I need to cry. And there are still days where I'll cry for Cola, and it's more from a beauty, just like, wow, you were such an incredible soul, and that physical connection. Like, I'm not crying because I'm sad, but I still feel residues of tears, so I'm going to honor that and cry. So it means that we can do that. But in terms of the community is there to go, we do all the washing, we do all the cooking, we do all the cleaning, we do all the childcare, we literally do everything, so that your full attention is the grief and is the healing around the grief. And having then the emotional and mental support, as well as the physical support with a professional, and then the spiritual of, do we need to do a soul retrieval, let's go into meditation together, let's do some drumming, let's do rattling, let's kind of allow your, like Josie's mentioned, but allow your luminous egg to be solid again, and then go into a ritual, go into a ceremony, let's hold it, let's hold ourselves, let's cradle ourselves, and then go into release, as I say, through the breath. There's some really powerful, simple things that we can do. And sometimes it is to sleep, to rest. It very much is, don't, like, trust your intuition, be guided by what your body is telling you, what your heart is telling you, what your emotions are telling you, because there's no right or wrong answer here. How my sister deals with grief is very different to how I deal with grief, is very different again to how my mum deals with grief. None of those things are right or wrong. It's right for the individual. So if it's right for the individual to go into a state of like practical support and crying, then that is absolutely right. And it's a step for somebody else to go, I'm gonna sit in silence, and then I'm gonna drum and chant and call to the soul of that animal to feel that connection, and that's also right. But yeah, really, that validation of honoring the time to cry, honoring, it's almost like the two heightened emotions, right? On one end of the spectrum, like, oh, I want to just share stories about my animal and laugh, and oh my god, the like trials and tribulations that we went through, and he was such a klutz here, and when they did this, but then be like, oh, and yeah, now I need to cry again, because it's a wound. It's a very, very deep wound, because we live with our animals, and they know us better than we know ourselves. And some of our animals know our deepest, darkest secrets that we wouldn't even dare share with another human, because heaven forbid they may judge. So it's almost like, wow, it's part of us that feels like they've gone, but we can still have that connection with them. So yeah, for me, it's the spiritual, physical, emotional, mental support.
Thank you for saying that and sharing, because I've actually started to do like daily meditation thanks to COVID, um, for since COVID started, like every day now. And I've actually been incorporating that as a daily routine. And my animals are always around with me. Sometimes I got a cat that will actually snuggle up on my lap when I'm meditating, or being near me. And I think um one takeaway that I've taken from you guys is, to prepare for the journey. And like, death is not the end, it's just moving on from, it's just a transition part. And so I've actually, from last month's call, I've actually been a lot more conscious of, you know how I speak to my animals as well. I mean, like, they're still, well, technically young, but I do rescue cases as well. So we've had to say goodbye to a few animals the last few months. And you know, it's taking away what you guys shared, you know, trying to be a lot more conscious of death, of the grief, you know, to give myself permission. It's okay, not, I don't have to have a false facade, which I think a lot of people do, and they sort of clamp up, you know, that stoicism, which, you know, a lot of people like sort of think like, oh, that's really cool. But I think sometimes when we close up too much, we suffocate ourselves, and then we just don't know how to deal with it, and it sort of, you know, explodes later on. As you were saying, you know, the death of the animal brings up a lot of other issues of the past, and we are grieving is not really so much the animal at that point in time. After that, it's actually to do with the past and whether or not we could let go or forgive or something, you know. And I just want to really thank you guys, because, you know, every time we have this monthly gathering, my heart just opens up a little bit more. And, you know, I sort of learn like, okay, be kinder to myself. That's the main thing I've been learning from you guys, is not to be so hard on myself, because everyone is so judgmental. And hey, I'm also a judgmental bitch, you know. But, you know, so I've been really trying very hard with, you know, when you share, you know, especially the last few ones, it's like I have to be kinder. I got to forgive myself so that I can be a better caregiver for my animals, because at the end of the day, they sense how I feel. And then when they sense how I feel, they act out accordingly, you know. And that's something that I really feel thankful with these sessions with you guys, because, you know, you give me a lot to think about. And, you know, I'm not perfect, but I'm really trying my best to be a better caregiver every day for them. And I have to thank, it's because of amazing teachers like you sharing, and always sharing so openly. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you for creating this space, right, in this circle for us to share. And following from what you said is, if it helps at all, like, and I know this comes from me connecting to a dog that I'm connecting to, but also the collective consciousness of canines, which I know came through as a transmission when I was with Josie on Tuesday. But really, all that our, certainly dogs want, and I'm sure all of our animals and our animal friends, is they want us to be happy and they want us to heal. That's all that they're like. They just want you to, like, we're literally showing up to show you, like, how you can heal, like how you, like, because they approach it from no ego and no judgment. It's like, we just want you to be happy, we want you to heal, we want you to be happy, we want you to heal. And it's when I've received that so often by the collective, and also by different canine souls, that it's always, it's almost like I hear it as a mantra in my head of like, be happy and heal, be happy and heal.
Like happy, joy. But dogs are so filled with that. Like, dogs can pick up a tennis ball and it's like the most wonderful thing in the absolute world, you know. And what dog doesn't greet their owner at the door happy with their tail? You know, it's just like
Yeah.
they're filled with that. I need to leave. I have to go see a patient.
Yes.
Actually,
Okay. But thanks, Dr. Josie.
Yeah.
Take care.
Hi,
Thank you
Josie.
so much.
Thank you.
Many
Steph,
blessings.
yeah. So Steph, you've listened in today. I mean, like, you know, what are your thoughts?
I wrote down a few notes. Actually, I took a nod from Dr. Emily last week and made sure I had a notepad. I like what Dr. Josie said about taking the time now to plant seeds, go inward. I think it's important, you talked about this too, that we allow ourselves to grieve and don't rush back to, like Dr. Josie was saying, work, life. Like you were saying, Isla, as well, those 4 days or whatever it is you can take is important for us. The spiritual body, Dr. Josie was talking about this too, and I've seen it before, but I didn't know what it was until she said it, is that the spiritual body of the animal starts to grow as they get close to being finished with their physical body. And I've experienced that, but I just didn't know what it was. But now I think back and it's like, it's exactly what was happening to that dog. Another thing I thought was this animals with no ego and no judgment. It's just something that, like you said, Amrys, I would like to also practice, because it's so true. They just don't think that way.
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't know. It's something about this monthly gatherings that we've had since we started. You know, it's been really shifting something in me slowly. You know, I keep getting takeaways, and then I keep looking back at, you know, how can I be a better caregiver for my animal? And I realized, you know, being a rescuer is that I've always been chasing the physical material stuff, you know, like, oh, I have to bring them to the doctor, they have to take their medicine, they gotta do this, do that, you know, to try and pump their body and prolong their lifespan. And that was the old way of thinking that I used to think until, you know, the last, I think especially the last 2 years, something shifted in me. Ironically, I think coincidentally is when I also met Isla the first time, when I did my interview with her. The really, like, oh my god, that must have been like a year ago at least. You know, something shifted, and I started to look at a very uh having a spiritual relationship with my animal, because I realized, you know, in a way, how I was trying to fix them, you know, in my mind, was how I was trying to fix myself, because I felt that I was broken. And, you know, I was just trying to, you know, like project it onto them, you know, like all my uh fears and my anxiety and what I wanted to do to try and save them, you know, like if I save them, I save myself, kind of thing. You know, it was really screwed up in that sense, because, you know, it's, I realized I have to heal myself, because, you know, I've got issues, you know, that I'm not dealing with. So I realized that if I start working with myself, and that's when I started meditating, you know, every day, and I started to feel something shift and change in me. And I think my animals around me could feel that as well, because suddenly the, I don't know how to explain it, like the dynamic energetically is sort of changed in the house a little bit. Even my relationship with my dog, you know, yeah, it's just, I'm staring at her now because she's sleeping by my side. But, you know, it's like something shifts when you become more conscious about how you take care of them, and when you realize that you actually have to take care of yourself first. When you don't, you know, things go all mucky and wrong. I realized that, you know, when I don't think of myself, and I just start scrambling like a headless chicken for every rescue case that I do. And then, like, you know, you sort of, you know, try and save them and pump them, and I realize like that's the wrong way of doing it. You know, who am I trying to save? You know, and and that's right, Steph, when you mentioned that, you know, when the physical body shrinks but the spiritual body expands, that hit me as well. I think at the same time it hit you when I heard that, you know, and I just went, oh bloody hell.
Yeah.
I think that was what I witnessed, but I didn't realize it then, you know. So it's like, I've, you know, maybe some people look at me and they sort of think like, you know, why am I such a weird rescuer now? Like, why do I allow the animals to pass much more willingly than before? And, you know, I think it really has to do with the fact that, you know, what we've been learning here as well, you know, the last few months, to be more conscious and aware. You know, it's like they are waiting for us to give them permission to go. You know, it's really a lot to do with our journey of growth as well, when it's tied in with them. You know, they literally, yeah, you know, it's like they live for us, they have their own journey, but, you know, they're with us for a reason as well, is to help us to become better human beings. So I don't know, it's been an amazing, wow, I don't know how many sessions have we had. I mean, July, August, September, October, maybe five, five, 4, 5, yeah, with Isla counting. Yeah, it's been very profound, Isla, seriously. Like, I've felt this shift every time, even though we meet once a month. You know, it's doing good for me,
Mm.
and I
Mm.
hope whoever's listening in on this,
Mm.
if they listen to the past recordings as well, that they might feel that shift as well, to become better somehow. And I really have to thank you guys, because um I don't think I can get this anywhere else, seriously.
Mm.
So I just really want to thank you.
It's I'm just like listening and feeling to what you're saying. I'm getting so excited because I'm just like, and that, my friend, is because you're living and existing and experience from your soul, and that's exactly what we are. Like, that's the beauty of this kind of reality, really, that our body is just a physical house for the soul. So we are soul, and we're in a physical body, and that physical body can change because we have been many things. We may be something else later on. Who knows? But there is just like, yes, and when we become conscious, the only way we can become conscious is by living in presence, and the only way we can live by being present is by living from trust. And when we live from trust, it's like, because our soul knows, our heart knows, and then, hey, we're actually living really similar to our animal friends, because that's the only place they know to live from. They, as I say, they have no ego and judgment. They have a brain, so they can problem solve, work out, they can learn, but they're not constantly like, oh, I need to save this animal because otherwise it's yet another tick about why I'm such a bad person, because this animal maybe could have had another 4 days and it's only had another 2. It's always this reflection of this understanding that our animals have free choice as well. So that's why we can connect to them to go, is it your time to go? Like I did with Paula. Like I had a client just this week to say, like, we're not sure if it's our time for our animal and we need to intervene. Can you just check in and ask? Yeah, I can. So they have this sense of free will. Or even if we are, again, through our own kind of projections of believing that we're a bad person, which is just not true. Like, we are all perfect, and so are animals. In this moment, in this time, everyone is perfect. But we kind of collect all these scenarios that make us and convince us that we are bad people. So we then try and intervene the best that we can with our animals. And I've had this before where what the animals connected to me and communicate with me is just like, I just want to be with my human. Yes, they are taking me to this therapy and that therapy to try and make my body stay on for longer. But it's like, it's going to be a matter of days or months. It's going to be a matter of days or months. And that's kind of time where we could just be together, like lying on the sofa, having a hug, you speaking to me, you singing to me, you're reading to me. Whereas it's like, it's in the car over here, over there. And yeah, so I'm so proud. I'm just like, yes, I'm so proud and so excited, and it's just music to my ears, because for me it's just like one person. Even if one person, just their awareness of who they truly are and the purpose of this beautiful journey of healing, which is why our animals come into our life at the time that they come in, because that's also why they're here to support us, to go, you are soul, come back to your soul, not like come out of your body, but exist in this body, but from soul. And like you said, when you do, you're like, wow, everything becomes really clear and magical and mystical, and I see life from such a totally different perspective. And then the beauty is, as you work on yourself, then that is what you put into the collective, so then it allows somebody else to work on themselves. And so it just creates that ripple effect. People are like, I don't know what it is that you're on, but I want me some of that. And it's like, I'm on soul. That's exactly what I'm on. So I'm really pleased you said that.
Well, actually, we're coming to the end, and I was just wondering, would you like to lead us in a short meditation to close this?
Yes. So I'm gonna do well, it's one of two things. I can do the short meditation, or I wasn't being rude. I was on my phone, but I was trying to find. I don't know if I can find it in time. There was a connection that I did with a dog, and just because of what we're talking about, it felt really apt to share. But it's from a while ago, and the story is. Let me see if I can find it while I'm sharing the story. The story is actually a friend of mine. A family member of hers was dying, and the dog was really depressed and really distressed, and she wanted me to check in on the dog. And the reality of what I got from the dog was, yes, there was an element of sadness because the human was dying, was preparing to pass, but the sadness was that the dog was kept away from the family member that was dying, even though the dog was part of the family, and he's like, I've been your family for all of this time, and now you're not allowing me to be with the human that is passing. Let me be part of the family. And so they did, and the dog changed again. But the dog did this really beautiful share. And if there's time, let me see if I can find it. I know it was from a while back. Because I know that we weren't going to be talking about this subject tonight, so I hadn't prepared, but I was feeling into a different meditation. But I'm going to give myself another 30 seconds, and then I'm going to go into okay, perfect. Here it is. So this is the share. If you want to close your eyes and hear it, I'm already at my altar. My candle is lit. This is what the dog wanted to share. My dear ones, you have looked after me so well. It is now my turn to look after you all. Love is not something that is here today, gone tomorrow. Do you feel your heartbeat? Then so long as you do, this is what keeps you connected to the living and non-living. Love is eternal and never fades or dies out. It is not possible. My dears, I have watched you. I have watched you all grow. I have seen your thoughts. I have felt your pain, and I washed it away for you. This is why I am now here. Let me carry you and lick your wounds, lick your sorrow, show you that life is still okay, that it is okay. Allow me to show you still where there can be smiles in life. Know it is okay to laugh even though you have sorrow in your heart. We are here for many things, and certainly one of them is to remind humans how to smile, how to laugh. Don't be let down by the could-haves, more times or too soons. This is the beauty of life, is we do not know. We do not know the mystery, and that is what makes us live our life. That is what makes us wake up every day with our tail wagging, our happy smile and welcoming the day no matter what we expect. We can't know what to expect, and that is the great teaching of life. Will we want to know what our everyday brought? Where is the magic in that? Where is the life? For it is no life at all if we already expect. My sweet family, my friends, let me do this for you. Don't think that I do not understand the aspect of the soul. Don't think that I am not here to be just your dog. I am more than that. We are more than that. For all that you do for me, now let me do this for you. I leave you with this. With every lick there is a memory. With every wag there is an imprint. With every bark there is a signature. We are encapsulated in the love even when we do not see it or feel it. It is there, swirling round us, touching us, supporting us. It is one of the most magnificent sights to see, and there it is. Let me be a reminder of this for you when you look at me. I am the carrier. I am the bridge. I am here for you, my family. You love me, but know that I love you. Yeah, I felt just really, really called from what we're sharing. Again, going back to they want us to be happy, they want us to heal, and yeah, just exist from the soul, experience from the soul, and that allows us to drop out of the why. But why is this? Why did this happen? Why? Whereas like, when we're heart led, it's a feeling. How do I feel? Rather than the why is this? Why is that? And the expansiveness of life.
Isla, I honestly feel the universe has been guiding us all this time since the day I've met you. Every time we never plan these sessions, honestly, people. We don't know what's gonna come out, what people share. But I always feel it's always a very special session that happens. There's magic that happens. And tonight, Isla sharing that, it's really meaningful, and it's a very nice way to end our session, and for everyone to take away and think about. So I just really want to thank you. You beautiful soul. Thank you so much.
Wow, thanks to the dog soul. That came from the soul of the dog, not me.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of saying for me, that's that doing this soul work is what always just makes me realize just how incredible life is and how incredible the interconnectedness of life is, and how supported we are, and really truly how supported we are, is just magical.
Thank you everyone. Thank you, Stephanie. It's always nice to see you,
Yeah.
and all the shares. So we'll catch on, hopefully next month, December. The time zone should be clocked in by then for you.
Ours should just switch this weekend, so I'll be following your lead next week, Isla.
Great.
Oh, is it you're going to be shifting it 1 hour earlier over there for you in Canada?
Honestly, I'm not sure what we're gonna do, but it's 1 hour. Fall
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Back. So does that mean that everything then lines up, right? Everything is then back to normal.
Well, the irony
It must
is
be.
I'm in Singapore and I'm on the equator, so nothing changes for me. So we don't have any daylight saving time. So it's only the northern and southern hemispheres that changes.
Oh,
Yeah. So yeah. So I have to, if I need to follow you guys, I have to check. Is it plus 8 hours now? I think with UK.
Well, yeah. If Steph goes back at the weekend, we went back just the weekend gone, so it must synchronize.
Yeah.
yeah.
Because we went back as well, so yeah, everything's back to normal.
Yeah, but
For the most
it's yeah, planets have been changing, and things have been afoot the last few weeks. I think it's just been crazy. But yeah, thank you again for this circle. We Joshua, we always meet every first Thursday of the month, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's the universal time because we're all from different time zones. Isla's from the UK, Stephanie and Julie's from Canada, Josie's from Florida, US. Joshua, I don't know where you're from, but I'm from Singapore. So we have to cross and connect, but it's always amazing time whenever we do this. I always get very deep, I'm always very moved by all the shares with everyone. So thank you for making the time, as always.
Thank you, and holding you guys and loving you guys so much. I really, sending you so much love and blessings.
Okay. Well, you take care, everyone, and have a good
Yes.
evening, day, or afternoon, wherever you are.
See you next month.
Okay.
Much love.
Have a good night from Texas, guys. Have a good
Good
one.
night. All right.
Bye, Joshua. Thanks for joining.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Wow. I'm so thankful and grateful that you took the time to listen to this podcast. It would mean the world to me if you could subscribe, download, rate, review, and share this with others whom you care about that may enjoy it as well. Thank you, and remember to be kind to yourself and others. Have an awesome day, everyone.